And now, Doug Davis and the official presentation.
Well, when I was asked to talk about private airport ownership, I didn't know if I was the right one to come up with this or not, because my knowledge and seeing of people who have their own airports usually were retired airline pilots that come out with enough money to buy it, something that was already built with a hangar and a brand new fancy home on it. I wasn't that lucky, but when I got out of the service in the early 70s, I went to work in the woods as a logger, which most everybody did. And one of the guys that was running the yarder, we started talking about skydiving, and he bet a bunch of us that we were chickens. None of us would go take our 3 jumps. So we came out here to the Enterprise Road and went took our jumps. Well, I fell in love with it. I liked it. The other guys, they did their 3 jumps, and that was it. And so I kept skydiving, and one day I bailed out at about 8,000 feet and pulled my chute. Nothing. I looked up and it was going like this, and I saw this airplane flying away. And I went, the old thing, what the hell am I doing jumping out of a perfectly good airplane? So 2 days later, I went into Bellingham and started my ground school and getting my private license. Well, I fell in love with that, and Alan O'Dell, who owned had Meadowmist at the time, he was my instructor, and I really learning how to fly from him before he passed away. In fact, I was the last one to fly with him before he died, and
in a midair.
In that mid-air crash, and it kind of set me back a little bit. And then I got to think, no, Alan wouldn't want me to be that way. And so I went back and got it. Well, I started thinking, well, okay, I'm going to become an airline pilot. So I got my instrument rating and my commercial rating, and couldn't buy a ride in anything. And so I thought, well, I'll go get my helicopter add-on, commercial add-on. So I went down and done that, and still nothing was going. So about 1975, I decided, well, I'm not going to get into the airlines, so I'm going to start buying and building airplanes. So I've got a book here with all the different airplanes that I started buying, and for too long I was airplane broke. So my wife and I decided to start a restaurant. Maybe that would supplement our income a little bit. Well, it supplemented my airplane habit, and in that period of time, I got to meet other guys, and I got to help build a couple of airstrips in the county. One was Bert Henderson's strip. His son and I, Ron, did a lot of the land clearing there. Well, that is now Butler Field, which JF owns. I sold that sold that to him through my real estate company, and then I got involved with Doug Sandy on his which is Riverside, down off of the east of Nugent's Corner on Mount Baker Highway, and I'd never had a thought of having my own place until my wife told me that you can't buy any more airplane parts because we can't fit them in the garage anymore, and she was tired of hiding airplane parts underneath the bed and cylinders over here and props over here. So one day it was in the fall of 92, my dad-in-law was an avid fisherman on the Nooksack River, and so I thought, well, I've got nothing going on, I'll take my pole and go down and sit with him and go fishing. Well, I parked off the end of the Hopewell Road and walked through the field to go down to the river, and I see this guy out in the field walking around, and I thought, well, he must own the property or something, so I went over and introduced myself to him, and talking to him, he told me his name, and I said, well, your name is Fulner? And I go, yeah. And I said, well, you related to Thelma Fulner? And he goes, well, that was my mom. This was her property. I said, oh, she was my Sunday school teacher for 5 years when I was in Sunday school. And so we built a decent relationship on it. And so I went down fishing, and a couple of weeks later I went down again. Well, Harry's out in this field again walking around. Well, he had just leased the field to the neighbor farmer, and he lived in Renton, and he had inherited the property from his mother. And so after a few times visiting, I said, gosh, I could just about land my airplane on this property. He goes, oh, you fly? I go, yeah. And he says, you think you could land in here? I go, oh, no problem. I had a 175 at the time, 57 175. And I says, yeah, if you want to go for a ride sometime, give me a call when you're coming up. I'll come up and land in the field and take you for a ride. So he called me about a month later, and I come up there, and we got in the airplane, went out and flew around, and we got done. I said, you know, I says, I don't know if I could ever afford it. I says, if you ever think about selling this place, I wouldn't mind buying it. He says, well, why? I says, well, I'd put a runway on it and make it a runway. Well, about 3 weeks later, he calls me up and he says, how about if I sell it to you? And I said, well, I don't know what it's worth, and I don't even know if I can come up with a down payment. And he says, well, how about if I carry the contract? So 2 weeks later, we went in and transferred everything over. I had a 5-year contract. He says, you do a 5-year contract to where you can build some equity in it, and then you refinance it and you buy it. So that's what it looked like when I bought it. And it had an old barn on it here, and the barn was full of pea hay, wet pea hay, because it had holes in the roof. So my son and I, through this hole in the barn, emptied out all of that. If we got to the floor and it was wet, I was going to blow the building down. When we got down and there was 2 inches of dry pea hay on the floor. So we cleaned it all out, and that became the skunk works for building airplanes. And the whole downstairs floor, I filled the manger in and concreted the floors, and so I had a place to build airplanes. Well, we had just built a new house and sold our old house in Nooksack, and I was developing a city block there that I owned, and we decided we couldn't. Well, the first day we landed in here after I bought it, we had 5 airplanes come in, and everybody come in with rakes and hoes and shovels, and we proceeded to take all the blackberries and the old milk house and everything down around the barn. And it was just about a year, we decided we couldn't, coming back and forth, going out there every day to play around, and we said, well, we just bought an old mobile home that a guy was selling, and we moved it on the place, and we moved in the mobile home, thinking that we'll stay here a couple of years and build a house. 16 years later, she decided that it was time to get out of that mobile home, and I always wanted to put a hangar up. Well, her being the manager of the money said, well, we can't afford to put the hangar up. So I just kept putting more stuff underneath the bed in the mobile home. Finally, she says, I think you need to build a hangar.
Good strategy.
So it just progressed, and then we were going to build a new house, and I ran into some problems with the county about permitting, and so I went in and just started remodeling the barn. So we actually rebuilt the barn into a house, and it progressed throughout the years. Well, we had a number of fly-ins and get-togethers, and continually for the last 30 years, just about at least 3 days a week, we've got airplanes coming in and turning around and taking off and landing, and people flying by, and just getting to be involved with this whole owning an airport and everything has been the joy for us of meeting all the new people and everybody that fly in. We've had people come in from Australia and New Zealand in their motorhomes, camping out at our place while they go out and visit the area, and it's all been just because of the airport. And we have people come in and camp during the summer times. We've hosted weddings, funerals, memorial services, parties. We've had just this year we had these guys called up and asked if they could do some short field practice with this Pilatus Porter, and I said, yeah, come on out. So they flew out, and then they made about probably 10 or 15 practices on it in the daytime, and he said, well, can we come back out at night? So they came back out at night and did it again. Well, they did this 4 different times in a 2-week period of time, and we still didn't know who these guys were. After a while, we figured they've got to be something to do with military. And they said they were just training pilots to fly on and off of airports. Well, the day they left, he called up and said, we want to fly out and drop something off to you. And I said, well, I'm not going to be there. And so they said, I says, there's an old pickup sitting out by the hangar, put it in the deal of the hangar. Well, I got back and it was their medallion of what they were, and so I texted him, and they were heading for Florida. They said they were taking everything, and they had a Casa? What was that twin that they had? I think that was
A Casa and a Twin Otter on floats.
Casa and a Twin Otter on floats at Bellingham. And so I texted him, I says, well, I assume you guys are military, and talking about going to Florida, and I says, you guys getting ready for Puerto Rico or Haiti? And he texted me back, he says, well, we normally don't do this, but he says, I'm the commander of the U.S. Air Force Special Ops Commission. And they were using our air trip to train landing on short field landings and stuff. We've had, and earlier it was later, in August, we had the squadron of Blackhawks from matter of fact, here's one of the Blackhawks. They wanted to do some night training, so we had to turn all the lights off on the place, and they did that. And then, but 5 or 6 years ago, you came out for the one where we had the assault party. They were just getting the new Blackhawks from Sikorsky that had the quiet systems on them, and you couldn't hear these things coming and land. In fact, everybody was inside the hangar, and we had all the lights off outside, and I had little Christmas lights inside the hangar just so we could see. And everybody's going, God, when are the guys supposed to come? And this was in November, and they were supposed to show up about 7 o'clock. And 7 o'clock rolls around, and nothing. And finally, somebody goes, "What's that noise?" I opened up the door, and 2 of them were sitting 30 feet away from our hangar, and we didn't even hear them land. So they did a bunch of takeoffs and landings, and then they went out on a barge out on the water and did landings on a barge out in the Sound, and then come back in for another run at our place. And they came back, flew back up, and brought me a medallion and some hats and some shirts and stuff. So just things like that you wouldn't get to have if you didn't have an airport. It was a blast. And then we had then Alan and all the Newports come in, and they were pretty much a regular deal. At any one time, we had one in the hangar fixing tail wheels and dinged L stabilizers, but you guys were a couple of years. You were running back and forth out there.
4 years.
But no, it's been a joy, and because I've got a sister-in-law that takes lots of pictures, I've got all sorts of pictures in here of fly-ins we've had. I've got all the pictures of the different airplanes, the 20-some-odd airplanes that I've been involved with building, along with 11 of them that I've owned and rebuilt, and waited for somebody to want them more than I did. And to this day, we still, if we hear an airplane go by, we step out and look, even if they're at 2,500 feet. And he comes in and with his. And then yesterday, the Homeland Security, or was Homeland Security, they came in with their helicopter and sit down and buzz and wait as he's playing around. And it's just this one here was one of the fly-ins. That airplane flew in Laos before the Vietnam War, when the U.S. wasn't in Laos with what was it, Air America?
Yeah.
This was one of the airplanes that was from Air America. This guy ended up with it, and it's at Monroe, at the airport of Monroe right now, which is closing down.
Is it? Oh, yeah, that's right,
Yeah, Snohomish County bought it for a public utility department. So that's, the Monroe Airport's disappearing. But we've had I've sold two of my other 175s, both shipped out to Australia. They brought containers in, disassembled them at my place, and shipped them out to Australia. And I got to know a lot of people from New Zealand, and they'd come in on their summertime. And a couple of them were renting Super Cubs to go to Alaska one summer, and they come and spend a couple days at our place. And just getting to meet all the different types of people and being involved in that part of the aviation, being I didn't get to become an airline pilot, well, which is kind of nice because I'd probably been on my third wife by now.
They get younger.
This is not a knock to anybody. But that's been the joy that we've had. We've had no bad experiences. Our neighbors haven't complained at all. I finally, after 10 years, I finally decided it was time to apply for the conditional use permit for a private use landing site. At the time I had 4 airplanes parked up out in my field, and I see this pickup drive up. Something was on the door, and he parked at the gate and walked in, and he goes, "Oh, you got an airport here?" And I go, "Yeah." And he says, "Well, where do you fly off of?" And I showed him, and we talked for 10 or 15 minutes about airplanes, and I finally asked him, "Well, I assume you're from Whatcom County and you came here for a reason." And he said, "Yeah, I've been told that I'm supposed to come out here and tell you that you're in violation of Whatcom County ordinance, blah, 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 the ordinance." And I says, "Well, what's it for?" He says, "Well, because you're in agricultural zoning, you're taking away the usefulness of agricultural ground by having an airport." And probably one of the only times I've ever had a quick comeback was, I says, "Well, my wife loves lawns." I says, "Are we in violation of having a big lawn?" "Well, I don't think so," he says. And I says, "Well, how can you tell me I can't land on my own lawn?" He goes, "I don't know." So I'm walking back to his truck, well, and I decided I better go do it. So it took me 2 years, and I finally got this beautiful piece of paper here that says, "Well, you're certified as a private use landing site." And I had to go through 2 public hearings. The first one because one lady filed a complaint and on it, and it turned out that she was the same lady that filed a complaint when Doug Sandy done his, but he had to change the zoning, agricultural zoning, to include private loose landing sites. There was nothing in there about airfields or airports. And it took him almost 4 years to get his. It took me 2 years, and when I got this, found out the gal that was making the complaints, she is also the zoning administrator for Whatcom County, and her name is on my sign.
Painful signature.
And same thing with Doug's. And so we finally got that in, and then we ended up registering it with the FAA, so it's on the section and all the maps, and I have to upgrade that every year. I don't know if any of you read this. You can thank Alan Snowy for this little advertisement for one of our fly-ins. You have to read it. I'm not going to read it to you.
Exactly where is that airport?
It's 7 Whiskey Alpha 3 is my identifier. It's 2.5 miles south of Everson, on the west or the east side of the Nooksack River.
Is it north-south?
Yeah, 1634.
Okay, so coming from Nugent's Corner, you're on one of the zigzag, you just go straight towards the river?
Yeah, if you come across the railroad tracks on Highway 9 after you make the 90-degree corner, or the corner coming north, and you make the next turn to the west, that is the Hopewell Road, runs from the mountain to the river. Well, if you come across the tracks, go to the end of the Hopewell Road, that's where we're at.
I think I drove in there by accident once. I missed a turn.
You must have jumped the railroad tracks pretty hard then.
What's the runway like?
It's about 1,700 feet. I had perfect approaches from both north and south end. In 1994, when we had the big flood, the neighbor to the north of me, David Syrie, this was all raspberries on the south end of the runway. he lost 52 acres of raspberries, and I lost about 4.5 acres of the corner of my property from the flood. And then in 2007, we fought. We got the Canadians involved, and we fought the erosion of the river. I convinced the Canadians that it was going to head towards the headwaters of the Sumas River, which run to Abbotsford. And they came down, and we had a big meeting. Jack Metcalf was our representative then, and he come down and looked at it, and the Canadians brought the mayor of Abbotsford, Mayor Ferguson, and John Lentz was the mayor of Chilliwack, and then Derek Penner was one of their MLAs, which is like our representatives. They came down and brought a BCTV news crew down, and we're standing there, and these guys are filming it, and we're watching 10-foot wide chunks of ground, 15 feet high, falling into the river, with raspberries falling them into the river. And it was 2 days later, Chrétien was having a summit meeting with Clinton in Ottawa, and it came down, what the heck's going on the Nooksack River. And about 3 weeks later, we had engineers coming in and designing all the wing dams that came in here. And so in '97, they did $2.2 million worth of bank protection here, which these dolos, they call dolos that they put in here, they stop they let the water flow through, but it slows it down to where they fill in siltation behind them. Well, now if you're coming in from the south, all of this area here is 50 to 60 foot tall cottonwood trees and brush and everything. It's all grown back in, and the river is now, well, the river is almost a mile wide, the channel from here to the other side of the river. And Nooksack, in researching, when I was doing all this, I researched all the old photos clear back into the late 1800s, and it's about a 35-year swing from one side of the river to the other. And it's gone, it's 30 years, and now it's coming back a little bit, but it's still a half a mile away from here. And when we get high water, we get running water right through here, but we'll never have problems with overtopping the bank. So that used to be a beautiful approach coming in over the water there. Well, now you just got to have a higher approach because the trees are getting taller to come in. I've got 2.5 miles of nothing on the north end, so no landing problems. If you land short, you're going to land in the neighbor's hayfield. But
So your neighbors are good? You don't?
I have not had a complaint from. Well, I went around and because I had to get the permit. I had to anybody within a 1/4 mile of the center line of my runway had to be notified. And I went around and invited all of them to come to the public hearing, and they all come in and said, "Oh no, he's been flying off of here for 10 years. We really like watching the airplanes." So that boded well for us to be able to do that. But no, it's been a labor of love. It's a full-time job. We mow during the mowing season, which is from about the end of February to, well, we'll probably mow one more time this month. It's normally about every 3 days we mow 7 acres of ground. But it's been well worth it, and it's been a fun place to have get-togethers and get to see people flying airplanes.
You got required prior permission to land there?
It's under the permitting of with the county, it's supposed to be a private use landing site. And I told the hearing examiner when he came up with a whole list of things that he was going to restrict me from doing, I asked him, I says, how can you do this and allow me to only have 1 or 2 takeoff and landings a day, no fly-ins, and a whole bunch of stuff that he put on there I couldn't do. I said, when 2 years earlier, the other guy down here, down the street, he can have unlimited takeoffs and landings, he can have fly-ins, he can have aircraft parked at his place, and he says, well, I can do it because I'm the hearing examiner. So I finally said, okay, well, I'll abide by your, or I'll accept your rules, but I'm not gonna abide by them. And he says, well, that's good, when somebody files a complaint and you lose your conditional use permit, I said, that's okay. Well, I've never had anybody complain, no problems and nothing. And he's no longer the hearing examiner, which was good. But I researched all of the federal requirements, and the feds don't care if you have an airport, other than if it affects any operations in Class B or C airspace. And we don't worry about it, we're not involved in that. So it's just that each individual county and every state has their own regulation. There's counties in Washington State that don't even require permits for private use landing sites. Well, we are on the left coast, so they require everything for everything.
Get yourself a spray rig though, and you can do it anywhere on ag property, right?
No,
Ag operations, I think, are allowed, aren't they?
no, Doug had to have the rules changed even for ag operations. There was nothing in the county charter at all about private use landing sites.
Hate to do it, Doug, but I gotta get going.
See you later. Nice to see you, Joe. But,
Let your step there.
no, I've enjoyed everything. I've enjoyed probably the more fun I've had is building and rebuilding airplanes. And luckily, I've been able to be involved with a lot of different A&Ps and that have helped me along the way. And then I taught my son how to work on airplanes and fly airplanes, and now he's a AI for Horizon Airlines. He's been down there for 25 years. So I have an in-home inspector for doing all my airplane inspections. And
Just gotta buy him lunch, I suppose, that's it, right?
no, I pay.
Well, he didn't work that angle very good.
No, he was too tight. He still got the first dollar he ever made. But,
One of those.
Yeah.
him and I together built 4 airplanes for him and I that we worked really good together on building them. He's built 2 tri-pacers. And, no, it'll be a sad day when we decide that we can't run the place anymore. Everybody, I get people ask me if I'm ready to sell it, and I say no, but I'll put you on the list. And they say, okay, well, how long's the list? And I say, well, there's over 50 people that are waiting in line to buy it. But anytime anybody wants to come and make me an offer more than I think it's worth, you're more than welcome to call. I've been lucky enough as being in the real estate business. I've sold the place down here on the end. I've sold a couple pieces of bare ground to people that have built on here, and I've assisted a couple guys in buying land that they ended up putting airstrips on that they never did permit, and sold land out on airports or on the islands. And so I've had a lot of fun and made income off of that out of my real estate business. Is being involved in the aviation part of it, that too. So, but it's been fun, and it's still fun. And like I say, if an airplane goes by, I'm always looking outside to see what it is. And
Well, that's all pilots, isn't it?
what's that?
That's all pilots, isn't it?
Yeah. Well, I've seen so many of them. I can just about tell you what color seats they've got in their airplanes as they go by. And, no, it's been a blast. We've had. When we were living in the mobile home, we were sitting on a Friday morning in August or July. It was the weekend of the Abbotsford Air Show. We heard this airplane flying, and I go, boy, that sounds like something with a pretty powerful engine in it. And I step outside, and about 3,000 feet was this black biplane flying around. And so we watched him, and he came over and he lined up with my runway out over the river, and he started doing aerobatics.
Oh,
And then he made one turn, and on the top of it, it had 1-800-COLLECT on it. Well, that was Sean Tucker. And I had just read in an aviation magazine about a week before was a deal about him, and he said he flies every day of the year. He practices every day. And when he's at an air show, he'll get up in the morning and go out and practice. So we watched him, and so we went out and stood out there, and he seen us, so he moved over onto the runway and finished his deal. And so we waved at him, and when he left, he did a knife edge, and he opened up the canopy and waved like this. And so I figured, okay, he said that he practices every day, and this was on Friday. I said, well, he'll be back tomorrow. So I called about 7 or 8 people, and they all came out, and we sat out there, and sure enough, here he came, same time every day. And he did the whole routine over his thing, and everybody's waving. So we figured, okay, well, Sunday he'll be out. Sunday we had probably 35 people out there, and Peggy and I took a couple of old garbage bags and put a 1 and a 0 on it. And every time he'd go by, we'd stand up and hold his 10 up. and so that, I went up to the air show that afternoon, and I went up and talked to him, and told him that. He says, oh, that you guys were the ones that were grading me, huh? But yeah, we've had many instances of I've got pictures of Greg Anders coming through in the P-51, I don't know, probably 250, 300 knots at about 8 feet off the ground, going by. Just a lot of fun times being on it, and it'll be a sad day when we decide we can't care for it anymore. But then we did enjoy all the Newports out there, and I even got to fly one of the Newports one time. I decided it was not comfortable for me because my legs were so long. I had to sit sideways in the seat and fly it like this because it was so tight inside that thing. I don't know how you still fly it.
We strapped it in.
Yeah, but
So the video was the first annual Westwind fly-in. Are you still doing fly-ins?
well, you know, I got to tell you, the best flying times that I've had were the late 70s, 80s, and early to mid 90s, and then after 9/11, everything kind of went to hell. And I can tell by how many airplanes come in and out throughout the year at my place what the economy's doing. And it's amazing. We don't get as many airplanes coming in and out as what we used to have. Used to be it was 3 or 4 a day would come in and land and take off at our place all year long. And I can fly off of my place all year long, unless it's, you know, unless it's got a rainstorm and you're not flying anyway, but you give it a day, it dries out and everybody that's luckily my ground drains that well. But if somebody wants to have a fly-in, we'll have a fly-in. I would like for somebody to do the organizing rather than us do the organizing, because it takes us anywhere from 2 to 3 weeks to get the place ready and get the hangar opened up and cleaned out. And but it's like I say, we'd have weddings there with 9 or 10 people, and up to 550 people for weddings that we've had. And it's nice and peaceful out there, so we got lots of things we can do, and nobody complains.
That's great.
But I've got photos here. That book is photos of all the airplanes I bought, built, and sold. I bought the second Maul M4 that Ray Maul built. I was cruising around Colorado, went back to see my sister, and decided I'd go check all the airports from Denver to Cheyenne, and I found this Maul sitting on the outside at First Air in right off the northwest tip of DIA. It's a private airport, and ended up buying that and bringing it home and rebuilding it. I've gone all over the country grabbing airplanes anytime I could see that there was a cheap airplane for sale, and if I could fly it, I'd fly it home, and otherwise I'd load the trailer up and go strip it down and bring her home. But I've enjoyed building them and rebuilding them as much as I enjoy flying them.
Are you still doing that?
Lots less now than usually because I'm starting to wear down. But I'm still building. I've got a Pacer S in this hangar that has been in this. I've had the wings done for 15 years, but in the midst of that, I've been building other airplanes for other people. I helped Don Muir finish off his RV-7, and we got it to, that's this one here, there. Him and I flew that to Oshkosh in 2018. That was a fun trip.
Beautiful airplane.
Yeah, it was a nice airplane.
Ted painted it, didn't he?
My brother-in-law painted it for him. Well, his painter painted it for him. His painter doesn't work there anymore, but that guy's an artist.
Was that Skillman's kid, was it?
Yeah. Yeah. And I've had him paint 4 airplanes for me. But no, it's been a blast. I've got Gear. I don't know if Gear's airplane here. He's got his Pacer in my hangar now, and it's fun to have somebody to play with rather than playing with myself, so to speak. If the hangar door is open, I'm in there working.
Tell us a little bit about the FAA. You obviously went through the steps with the FAA.
Yep.
Get it permitted. So what did you do there?
That I just went online and filled the paperwork out, and that was it. And I got it on. You did it on yours?
Yeah.
Did you have to get a conditional use permit for yours?
No.
Yeah.
Helicopter's a little bit different, right?
Yeah.
Helipad, because I'm not changing the use of any of the space.
Well, you're taking the usefulness of ag ground.
No, I'm not. Well, I know the driveway.
It's still ag and it's an open space.
It's an ag, same as us, yeah. And the funny thing about ours is typically from a taxation standpoint, they're required to take the runway and the airport property off of the open space classification, so I pay a higher taxation. They've never done it. And being me not to say.
We got a lady here from Whatcom County Treasury.
Yeah.
What's that?
Sorry. It's still agriculture, you're growing grass, right?
Well, everything I don't, well, when I started, another thing, where are we at here? Oh, you see these little black deals here? We got into the ginseng business, of raising ginseng. And after 12 and a half years of raising ginseng, we decided that it was way too much work. And the expense, everything, when we got our ginseng processed, we had to put it into barrels and ship it to Hong Kong. And there were 3 buyers in Hong Kong that controlled the ginseng market in the world. And you wouldn't know what you're going to get out of it until they got in and opened the barrels up. And we shipped, all total, 4 containers a year for every 4 years we harvested. And we shipped containers of ginseng back there, and we never knew what we were going to make until they said, oh, well, the last shipment we shipped out, there was a ginseng grower in Wisconsin. His son moved to Canada, and at the time, I guess Canada had a deal that if you could provide so many people with jobs in Canada, the government would loan you up to $1 million and a half to start a business. So his son came up into northern BC, about by Merritt and Spence's Bridge in that area, and bought 100 and some acres and planted it full of ginseng. Well, the only thing about ginseng up there is that ginseng does not like any water on it in the growing season. Well, the soil was so sandy up there, they had to irrigate. So he started the last year that we shipped ours over there, he shipped like 1.5 million pounds of ginseng to China. They opened up the barrels, took a look at it, shut them up, and shipped them back.
Yeah, at his expense. Too.
At his expense, because it was really low quality ginseng. So he ended up turning around and selling it as American ginseng throughout Europe, and it killed the market. And they're not raising, there's no ginseng farms up there anymore left. And we decided, forget it, we're done with that. So then we thought the only thing we're gonna grow is airplanes. But the neighbor rents, he uses for his dairy farm, he rents everything I don't use. But,
Did you tell me you use a little bit of his property on the north end?
I've got an easement, I bought an easement from him to take 600 feet onto his, well, where the turnaround is at the bottom, well, actually, this tree right there is my property line.
Oh, yeah.
And then I've got 600 feet into his property line
Yeah.
too.
It used to be the bump. I think the bump's gone.
Well, it is, and the reason that is because the property down here used to belong to the guy that I bought it from, his mother. She raised raspberries, Thelma Fonager, and that's the old bumps from the old raspberry field. I bladed it and replanted it, and it's still, you can still feel them bumps, you can't get rid of them.
Yeah, when I landed there the other day, I sat down and I could feel there was a little ridge there. And I had to move over a little to
Yeah.
avoid.
I've gone through there and filled all the low spots in. They last about a year and a half, and then you still feel them raspberry ruts again.
Interesting.
How long does it take you to mow?
Depends on if there's two of us mowing, we can do it in about 3 hours with two of us.
Every
How many
3
years
days.
is that?
Every 3 days. But it's fun. Sometimes.
Yeah, very cool. It's certainly a beautiful strip you got there.
Well, we don't get to take vacations during the summer. I've got a granddaughter that lives in the mobile home there with us, and that's my great granddaughter. That's my newest pilot. She took her first ride at 2 years old in February, and now if she hears the airplane start up, she's screaming, running out the door, wanting to go flying with Papa. So she's my co-pilot. But no, it's lots of fun. And I was told by the guys down at Fort Lewis or Lewis McCord that they'll probably come up maybe this spring and do another approach assault training. They do simulated assaults. They don't have troops. They were going to bring troops up, but the deal with in Haiti, the problem in Haiti, they transferred a lot of those troops, got sent somewheres to be ready to go into Haiti.
And did they contact you before they did that and asked for permission to come, or what did they do?
Oh, the
military guys.
The Army guys, they come up and there's a whole stack of paperwork like that to fill out for them to come and land. They didn't. They piggybacked off what they did a few years ago to come in this year. And all they had to do was call them. We agreed. And the way I got the first one is the guy called me up and he said, I says, well, how did you pick my place? He says, well, I got to looking for airstrips and I looked on here and I see we both have the same last name. So that's probably my first chance to try to get into something. Well, he now is the liaison between the Army and Sikorsky. He's back east.
Okay.
And he handles all the procurements and stuff. He retired out of the Army and went over to deal out with Sikorsky. I still stay in touch with him, and he's a pretty nice guy. Wade Davis is his name. But they're probably going to come back early this next year and do some more night approaches.
Uh-huh. So did they set up any IR stuff on the runway or anything?
They came in and, well, these guys came in and put little discs along the runway.
They can
for
see
night.
with their NVGs.
So, yeah,
Yeah.
and they come in and put it on. The helicopters, they didn't do that. They would just come in, because they would land out in the field anyway, out here in the field.
Yeah.
And I tell you what, those things are quiet. You really have to be listening for them when they come in. That they're so, you think something that big with it, and then that's when they got the blades that tilt down, that are the rotors are tilted down, and that really cuts the chop out of them. Is that build it down? I don't know how they're just built that way. I
Yeah.
guess.
One of those was the first one into the Osama bin Laden compound, I think. But it had loss of temperature effectiveness apparently,
Yeah.
and it crashed, right, in that confined area. But they would have had a tough time hearing it coming from what you said.
Yeah. Well, when these guys came in, these helicopters were brand new. They were delivered out of California. They were brand new to Lewis McChord, and they were transitioning to all of their helicopters were coming with that. And then they all had the little disco ball on the top, which was supposed to be some surveillance system or something on it. And they were fun to talk to. We invited them up when they came up the first time. They flew up in the daylight with one helicopter, and Peggy had treats and coffee and everything for them. And we had got a call here a few years ago. I was rebuilding a Mall M4 180 for a friend of mine, and the Northwest Mall Association called and asked if they could come in. They were going to do some fly-arounds up here and hit all the airstrips. And I said, well, tell me what time you're going to be here, and we'll have coffee and treats for you. So they brought 27 airplanes in, and they were just supposed to just come and stop for a minute, and then they were going to go to Point Roberts. Well, they were having so much fun, they decided not to go to Point Roberts.
You had a donut run?
They called me up the next day and said, well, then next weekend, if you guys want to fly that mall down to Oak Harbor, to the airstrip at Oak Harbor, we're getting a tour of the Navy base, because one of the members was one of the commanders at Whidbey Island. And so we got a private showing of all the people in the mall association, and then we flew his mall over there and got to go through all of Whidbey, everything, and they would each commander would hand us off to the next guy in charge of different divisions. We got to go in the missile room. There was no place that we couldn't go, that we got to go. They took us up into the tower and into the radar units, and we watched them launching F-18s and stuff off the runways there. And but there's things like that, you don't get a lot of chance to get to see that end of it. And by being involved in the aviation end of it, it's been a real joy.
Thank you very much, Doug.
Thank you.